Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Happy Friday, one and all. Joining me today, I've got Michael McCubs and Henry Hill. Mikey, how are you, man?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Had a few days off, so feeling refreshed. I say feeling refreshed. I had a very bad night's sleep last night, so it was all for nothing, all for bloody nothing. But yeah, good. It's been obviously quite exciting couple of weeks in European football, hasn't it? After all of that fallout, and so still processing that, but at least we've had some pretty entertaining Champions League ties, haven't we?
Fair. I think it was probably the thought of Man City winning their maiden Champions League that was keeping you up at night. I mean, what a performance from them, and Chelsea, to be fair, as well. I mean, Henry, did you enjoy the Champions League in midweek? Quickly.
I did, actually. I think they were two brilliant games. Sometimes the semi-finals can be a bit cagey, but they both had a little bit of something, didn't they? And actually, I was so impressed with Chelsea yesterday. A little bit disappointed with Real Madrid, but yeah, Chelsea, I think they really went for it. And there's just so many talented players in that squad, isn't it? And it's frightening with Havertz coming good now. Even Werner looking like he can find the back of the net, and Mason Mount, Pulisic, all kind of brilliant assets there. So yeah, what an exciting final! One of the hardest to call finals in a long time, I think. I really don't know which way that one's going to go.
Absolutely. I'm not a betting man, but I'm not going to get involved in any predictions just yet, because my predictions are notoriously wrong. But anyway, let's get back to today's show. We're not actually talking about the Champions League. If you want to go watch that, check out UCL Review on Wednesday and Thursday morning, which dropped on Eurofootball Daily. Instead, we're going to talk about rebuilding Europe's biggest clubs, because at Ben_66 said, with Juventus losing the Scudetto and PSG losing their grip on Ligue 1, are we seeing the traditional monopolies lose their power? It's obviously been a dramatic week in European club football as well in the leagues. Firstly, last weekend, Inter Milan ended Juve's 9-year Scudetto dominance by claiming their first since 2010. Incidentally, the last time they won a trophy as well. I couldn't believe it being that long since they even won a Coppa Italia as well. Over in France, Lille maintained their 1-point gap over PSG before they were dumped out of the Champions League at the semi-final stage by Man City, obviously. So today we want to analyse what has gone wrong in PSG and Juventus' seasons, how they can rebuild, and also throw in another club, Borussia Dortmund, in there as well. But, McCubs, we're going to kick off with Juventus because it's been not just a dramatic season, but a lot of change over the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, I feel like we've spoken a lot about the club that Andrea Pirlo came into last summer, but it is worth going over it quickly again, because obviously Maurizio Sarri came in, was not a success, although he did win the Serie A title. He did so with a points total which was worse than in the previous 8 seasons. They lost 7 league games, which was a figure which very, very rarely rack up. I think it's only been topped twice since 1999. The 43 goals they conceded was the most since 2010-11. So by all accounts, Juve were a lot worse than they had been in recent seasons. I think in the last 2 seasons under Allegri even, they were showing signs of decline as well. They also obviously went out to Lyon in the last 16 of the Champions League. So, I mean, these are all things that, made Pirlo's job already quite tough. And obviously, for a manager with zero experience, he was always going to have, he was always going to face a huge amount of scrutiny. And I don't think any of us at EFD backed the appointment, especially when someone like Pochettino was on the market. But I think going off first is, I think the solution to Juve's problems right now is not sacking Andrea Pirlo for sure. I think in a year he has proved that he is capable of doing the job, and nevertheless, Pochettino is no longer available. Zinedine Zidane, who's been a long-term target of theirs, I don't think will be available, if I'm honest. I think he very much has unfinished business at Real, and I can't see Perez letting go of him while Real are, in such a transitional period as they are at the moment. I may be wrong. Florentino Perez is an unpredictable guy, but nevertheless, I think you'd be undoing what has been a season of progress. I think, weirdly enough, I think it has been a season of progress. I think if they'd kept hold of Sarri, I still think they would have lost out on the title to Inter. I think they've been clearly the best team in Serie A, especially since the turn of the year. And things like their transfer policy has turned a corner, I think. They spent a net 18.6 million last summer. 3 of their 4 major arrivals arrived on loan, didn't they? But McKennie's been made permanent now. I expect the same will happen for Chiesa after those 2 years, won't it? But yeah, I mean, obviously there have been problems. They've never been higher than third at any point in the season. They've lost 5 league games. Also dropped points against the likes of Crotone and Benevento. They failed to beat Hellas Verona in 2 attempts this term. They're on track to finish with their worst points total since 2010-11. So it's not, it's not been a good season. But I think their style of play has improved on last term. They've got the second best defence. They've only scored 67 goals, but they're first for XG and expected goals against. Doesn't mean they're the best team in the division, but it does suggest that this is a team that will improve next season if they start to meet those metrics. But yeah, so I think the problems they face are very much problems, like you say, Dukes, that have been built up over the years. Obviously, that squad still features a lot of the players, or at least, it still features the core of that side, which dominated the mid-2010s. They're still very reliant on Chiellini in particular. They're still very reliant on Cuadrado at right back. Obviously very reliant on Cristiano Ronaldo, who wasn't part of that, that great Juve side initially, but is 36 years old now. He's being paid 31 million euros a year. We know that Juve are going to try and balance the books this summer, and it looks like he's going to be a priority. I think it's probably a shame for Juve in some ways that United look like they're going to be able to get Cavani to stay, because I think he would have actually been a really good option in terms of getting in another short-term solution for United's centre-forward problem. PSG is, I feel like, the only other place you could see him going at this stage, but I think that does need to be a priority for them now, because I think while he has been a success on the pitch and off the pitch for Juve, I think he solves obviously a lot of their problems going into the transfer market this summer. So yeah, there are a number of areas in that squad that need rejuvenating, I think, especially in the defence. But I think in some ways, it's the midfield that Pirlo needs to kind of work out this summer, because obviously they've played in a kind of 4-4-2 for most of the season. That's worked really well for a player like Weston McKennie, who he's improved a lot. Obviously, Morata has thrived in that system as well, and I think that's a good sign that Pirlo is getting his ideas across, that he's been able to improve players like that. Players that have bought into his kind of pressing philosophy as well. They're pressing more than any team in Serie A this season. I think last season they ranked 4th in that regard. So he's making progress in that sense. But yeah, despite that, I still feel like Rabiot and Bentancur operate best in a 3-man midfield. And I feel like we haven't seen the best of either of those players this season. So, I mean, there's options there in terms of either he could try and get a bigger creator in there, because Bentancur's creative numbers have dropped off. Hakan Çalhanoğlu's obviously out of contract, although I'd still expect him to sign. Rodrigo de Paul, maybe a more realistic option. He's obviously been immense for Udinese for the last few years and really should be at a bigger club. Marcel Sabitzer, I thought, at RB Leipzig, obviously his contract's up next year as well. Could they perhaps challenge Tottenham for his signature? I think he'd be a good fit. But then if they wanted to shore up defensively and push Bentancur forward, I was thinking someone like Dennis Zakaria maybe from Mönchengladbach. His contract's up next year as well, and he's a much cheaper option than, say, Eduardo Camavinga. I think is the kind of, he's the star boy, isn't he, in a position like that. Left back as well, I think they need to work on. Danilo's been done a very good job there this season. He's been one of Pirlo's most trusted players, hasn't he? But I think in the long term they do need an upgrade there. Robin Gosens is obviously great as a wing back for Atalanta. I think also Jose Gaia, who I actually suggested in a scout report for them back in February. He's now been heavily linked with them in recent weeks, and apparently Valencia are far more keen to sell to a side like Juventus than a rival in La Liga like Barcelona. So that could be a really good option, I think, and I think he'd be available for around 25 million euros, which I think for a left back of his standard would be very good. So if they have the money to pay that, I think he would be a really good option. And then obviously there is the striker issue. If Ronaldo were to leave, I think you probably have to try and tie down Dybala to a new contract, or you go for someone like Andre Silva perhaps, although he's going to be in really high demand this summer. So So yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done at Juventus, but I do think they're going in the right direction. I think getting Chiesa and Kulusevski last year, they're really, really important acquisitions. I think Chiesa, now that he's been played off the left a lot recently, has been really effective there. That solves an issue for them, because I think the left side could have potentially been a big problem for them long term. So that saves them having to spend a shed load on a left-sided player. So yeah, it's very much through the middle. But I think, yeah, if they can get Morata and Dybala gelling well next season, then I think the goals will come. You'll see improvements from Kulusevski. I think Chiesa's only going to get better. So yeah, I don't think it's a time to panic for Juve. I think the problem is that they haven't won Serie A, and their standards have been so high in that sense for so many years that it is obviously seen as a failure. But in the long term, I think they need to stick with this project. And yeah, I think the only thing that I think could see Pirlo lose his job, should see Pirlo lose his job, is if he doesn't get Champions League. Because I just don't think you can stick with a Juve manager if they don't get Champions League, whether or not they're up to the job. Because it's just it's just too much money lost, isn't it? And in that sense, it's just it's just not really acceptable. So that Juve fans need to pray they get Champions League, and I hope that there are some funds to spend in the summer.
Yeah, it will be so interesting this summer. I mean, the man who's linked with a return, if Pirlo does leave, is Max Allegri, which for me is kind of a defeat for both parties, because this is the man you got rid of because his Champions League performances supposedly weren't good enough, despite him, producing much better Champions League performances than Sarri and Pirlo have since. And for Allegri, he left to go have a break and then try and get a top job somewhere, and he hasn't been offered anyone. So, or at least not, as far as we know. So, I don't think Max Allegri is that exciting an appointment for this side, and I'm with you. I'd probably stick with the green shoots of something special in this new generation coming through at Juve. De Ligt and Demiral as well in central defence as well. They could probably strengthen on left back and right back, and then I probably would sell Ronaldo, to be honest. Not because I don't think he's been fantastic this year. He's the top scorer in Serie A as we shoot this, and but it's just those wages, and I don't know where he fits in with Dybala and Morata, and I think there's going to be more of a market for Ronaldo this summer than Dybala. But that's just my take on it. Let's move on over to France, because this week, Henry, PSG limped out of the Champions League. We were talking about it on UCL Review. Ill-disciplined display, but it's really that sort of concern about where they're going in Ligue 1 with a title race on our hands in Ligue 1 that we haven't seen since that Monaco win in 2016-17.
Well, we've discussed this a little bit in the Champions League review this week. I think it's all going to be fine for PSG in the long run. I think Pochettino is going to get a chance to rebuild. And at the end of the day, it was kind of a perfect storm that arose this year that's left them in the predicament that they're in. I mean, let's just roll back 12 months ago. They're in the final of the Champions League for the first time, certainly in the Qatari era as well. They won the Coupe de la Ligue and the Coupe de France, and they finished the curtailed Ligue 1 12 points clear of second place Marseille. So it's all looking good for them, really. However, obviously, financial issues have struck French football particularly hard. I think the Ligue 1 and Ligue 2 clubs collectively are set to lose 1.3 billion euros. That's the number that's being said as a result of this. And surprise, surprise, PSG are absorbing sort of the heavy chunk of that. I think Al Khalifi said they were scheduled to lose something about 350 million euros in a windfall there, and they said there was going to have to rein in the spending. And you saw that in their transfer business last summer. Obviously, they did make that Mauro Icardi deal permanent for 45 million, but Inter Milan slashed the initial deal which they had written into that contract there. So they kind of got him at a bit of a bargain there. But then you look at the rest of the signings: Rafinha, Sergio Rico, Danilo Pereira, Alessandro Florenzi, and actually, I mean, Moise Kean, he's been an excellent loan addition. But the rest of the guys, I don't think you can look at those and say these are world-class additions to that PSG squad. And sure enough, that's kind of... We've seen the team struggle throughout the season as a result of that. Let's not forget they were hit hard with COVID at the start of the year, and you're never quite sure what lineup PSG were going to be putting out, and rolling straight in from that Champions League final run as well. So they started poorly with 2 consecutive defeats and lost 4 of their opening 14 league games. That's one more than they lost in 27 in 2019-20, and they've only been top of the league for 9 match weeks due to these kind of intermittent defeats. They lost their manager mid-season. Tuchel bubbling tensions always with Leonardo, calling him out in the press. Leonardo made it clear that Tuchel wasn't going to win if it came to a sort of an argument between the two. Pochettino had to come in, and to be fair, he won 13 of his 17 games, his first 17 games in charge, but losing 4 compared to Tuchel's 11 his first 18. But just like we said, just intermittent problems here and there. And I think if you look at the PSG squad, they haven't really been able to put out. You never know who's quite going to be on the team sheet. They've used 33 players in Ligue 1 this season, including a smattering of their youth players that have come through. Only Navas and Mbappe have played over 2,000 minutes. So I think that's where you can really see the issues there. We've always seen Neymar's had his injury problems again. So PSG, they've not been able to put out consistent sides. So I think looking to next season, when they do and then eventually have to rebuild, because I think they'll have saved some money from their transfer business last year, I think it's about adding some quality additions to keep that team more stable and more recognisable week in, week out, to reassert that dominance over Ligue 1. I should say, in the meantime, in terms of Ligue 1, Lille have sort of come together in a wonderful way with their signings. They've been replacing players effectively. We spoke about this on the podcast this week. Botman in for Gabriel, even Yilmaz coming in, doing a good job there. And also, they exited the Europa League at the round of 32, so they've had Ligue 1 to focus on for quite a long time. And it's the same with Monaco too. Monaco haven't had any European football to have to worry about this year. Also Lyon. So if you're looking at these teams, that they've all been able to focus their attentions on Ligue 1, where PSG have had a few more plates spinning and going on. None of the French sides other than PSG really did that well in Europe this season, which I think is interesting there. Let's look at what they could do to try and fix their team then, because it kind of does depend on the futures of Neymar and Mbappe, who are both yet to sign new deals, but we'll get to the forward options a little bit later, because we'll start in defence. And one of the things that Tuchel fell out with Leonardo over was he wanted a new centre-back. In particular, I was reading that he wanted Antonio Rudiger to come in. They lost, obviously, Thiago Silva. He's proven to be an excellent addition at Chelsea. And he wanted a new centre-back, but instead he got Danilo Pereira, who was a central defensive midfielder, and kind of out of spite, he was almost playing him at central defence. Anyway, looking at who they could get, I think if Sergio Ramos is available, I think that would be an excellent short-term solution for PSG. They have a kind of funny gentleman's agreement with Real Madrid that they don't really go after each other's players, but I think if Ramos was available and Pochettino wanted that kind of depth of experience at the back, obviously he's got Marquinhos, who's excellent, but I think Sergio Ramos would be an interesting shout, or maybe even a bit more left field, Samuel Umtiti, just a player who could at least come in and play 10, 15, 20 games throughout the season just to shore up that defence. They don't have to keep relying on sort of ringers to go into that back line, because I think that was a real issue against City, as we just saw a defence that wasn't up to scratch, certainly against the very best. Left back, they've got a number of options who could come good. I think Kajawa, Baka and Diallo, these aren't all incredible players, but I certainly think as a collective they can all do a job there. But if we look at right back, I think the luxury item this summer for most of the big sides is going to be Achraf Hakimi, isn't it? Inter's financial situation is a really interesting one, and it seems like although they don't want to sell everyone, all their players have a price. Lukaku's is apparently about £105 million. Steven Zhang is reportedly in Italy this week. This is the president of the club trying to sort that out. And similarly with Hakimi, I think it's a €50 million price tag, which if someone meets that, they will listen and sit down because they do need the cash. He's 22 years old. He's been exceptional for Inter, as he was at Dortmund the season before. And apparently Arsenal going in for him. Surely he would choose PSG over there. Bayern Munich is a bit more of an interesting one. Quite surprised to see that, actually, considering Benjamin Pavard and some of their other options there. So yeah, if PSG had the money, then I don't see why not. Another more affordable option, I think might be more realistic, is Hector Bellerin, because it really does depend on how much money PSG have, but he's often the man you see quoted for going there for about £22 million. Moving further forward, I love the Dennis Zakaria option you mentioned. I think he's going to be the central defensive man in demand this year. And also Rodrigo de Paul, as you said, another really exciting player who needs to move on from Udinese as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, in the striking department, Icardi has been underwhelming, hasn't he? 7 goals and 3 assists in 1,000 league minutes. Hasn't had loads of chances. Who knows what will happen with the Moise Kean deal? Maybe that could... maybe he'll stay, maybe he'll go back to Everton. Maybe even Juventus are reportedly interested in him, aren't they? But should Mbappe or Neymar leave, then they will need to probably get a big signature signing to come in there. And Mohamed Salah, I think there's no smoke without fire, and there has been rumours that he might be pushing for a move, doesn't he? I mean, we'll throw another name in there, Raheem Sterling. Who knows? With
wow, imagine.
Just imagine. Yeah, I think we'll wait on that one just to see.
It
would
be fun. But yeah. It would be really fun to see him in Ligue 1, actually, just tearing apart defences week in, week out.
I completely agree with you. You know, Sancho too would be excellent. But if we look at maybe some more feasible options, obviously Aguero, he's going to be on the market as well. But then Andre Silva, I think, brilliant player, 25 goals, 4 assists. His agent came out and dismissed suggestions there was a 30 million euro release clause in his contract. I think it'll be more, maybe around the 40 million euro mark. If Eintracht do miss out on Champions League football, which is a very realistic proposition, then I think he could be an option, and I think he also fits the bill, I think, of what PSG kind of player they look forward to. Another name I was just thinking about in preparation for this, Andre Kramerich. He said in February that he was maybe thinking about moving on from Hoffenheim at the end of the year. His contract's up next season. He's such a consistent goal scorer. I don't see why he wouldn't be someone that a big club would be looking at too. And, you know, Danny Ings, I think, is still a good option. He wouldn't go to PSG, but yeah, I think these are the kind of like forwards that if they are looking for someone to kind of complement what they've already got, these are the players who they should be looking at. But yeah, I think Andre Kramerich and Andre Silva are two excellent options there. But yeah, like I said, these are just players that could come into PSG, sort of cement their place and push on. But yeah, I'd be intrigued to know what you guys think of my suggestions.
Well, they were good, I think. They were very good. It just depends on this forward line. We don't really know who's coming and going. Is Moise Kean going to stay? Is Mauro Icardi going to be sold? I mean, he was woeful on Tuesday night. I don't think he's had a particularly good season, albeit with some injury issues there as well. I think Achraf Hakimi is a great shout, to be honest. I think he's such a difference maker in attack. I mean, yes, there's some question marks over his defending, but what is it? 7 goals and 6 assists this year for Inter Milan. Like, that is just output that you don't really see in a fullback outside of like Theo Hernandez and Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson when they're at their best as well. So he's definitely would be a great addition in there. I can't really see Salah or Sancho going to PSG personally. I think Salah's probably hankering for a bigger contract. I think Liverpool would be mad to sell Salah at whatever price. Mane maybe, but Salah I think completely off the table. As for Sancho, who knows? I think there'll be better offers for him financially from the Premier League unless Mbappe or Neymar leaves, and I can't really see them leaving. So we'll see. But good suggestions, Henry. Really enjoyed that. Let's move over to Borussia Dortmund, Sancho's club, because last season they finished second, obviously. That was 13 points behind Bayern, but still 3 ahead of Leipzig and 6 points clear of 5th place Leverkusen. So comfortably in the Champions League spots. Last summer, they spent a net £39 million to bring in Emre Can and a then 16-year-old Jude Bellingham, one of which has been phenomenal and the other which has been a major disappointment. I don't even need to clarify which one I'm talking about. They also brought in Thomas Meunier on a free. We've talked about that in previous Continental clubs. Probably not the most inspiring signing to replace an insanely athletic fullback in Achraf Hakimi. And they also brought in Renier on loan from Real Madrid, who just hasn't really been given a shot. I don't really know what's gone on there. But after winning 5 of their opening 6 games, they only won 1 of their next 5. And it felt like the Dortmund hierarchy were quite trigger happy in getting rid of Lucien Favre at that point. I think it was like they knew that they could get Marco Rose in at some stage. But I don't know why they just didn't wait a bit longer, because getting rid of Lucien Favre to replace him with his assistant Edin Terzic, you know, what was really the point? They were 5th at the time. They were 6 points off leaders Bayer Leverkusen and 2 points behind 4th place Wolfsburg. So they were still in the hunt for Champions League football. Now, they've only won 11 of their last 20 Bundesliga games since, including 6 defeats. Although they have won their last 4, and that did include a 2-0 victory over Wolfsburg. Not last weekend because it was the Pokal last weekend, but the weekend before that, which puts them in the driving seat for Champions League qualification as well. They are in 5th, but they're only 2 points behind 3rd place Wolfsburg. And with their firepower at the moment, some players getting into really good form as well. Torgan Hazard coming back into form. Marco Reus has been exceptional recently as well. With 3 games to go, I think they'll probably finish in the top 4. Although they do still have to play Bayer Leverkusen and RB Leipzig. So it's by no means sort of a sealed deal. So in terms of what they need, that's what's happened so far. But what do they need? Well, it all depends on whether they make the Champions League, obviously. It seems very likely that Jadon Sancho will leave this summer. Their chief executive, Michael Zorc, came out this week and said there was a gentleman's agreement still in place from last year. If they get a set amount of money, which I think is around £90 million, before the 1st of July or some date in July before their summer training camp starts, then he'll be allowed to leave. And that training camp really does matter to Dortmund. They made it perfectly clear last year that they were willing to sell Sancho, and everyone was like, no, they're bluffing, there's no deadline. There actually is a deadline on this. So Man United, just get your shit together this time and actually just pay before the deadline if you want him. There's also some players, approaching the end of their contracts as well. Zagadou, Delaney, Hummels, Witsel and Dahoud only have 1 year left on their deals as well. So there might be some movement there. They obviously need a new goalkeeper. I think that's been painfully obvious for a few years now. Berkey is not good enough. 33-year-old Hitz, not good enough either. I think they could look to sign Alphonse Areola from PSG, especially if Fulham go down, which
Fantastic
looks
shout.
almost...
Thank
you, McCubs.
When Fulham go down.
When Fulham go down. Okay, we're at a when situation with Fulham fan Henry Hill. I mean,
Defeated.
only Emi
He's
Martinez...
defeated.
Yeah, he's accepted it. I remember being like that with Sunderland after a while. You just got to take it.
Yeah.
Only Jan Oblak and Emi Martinez have saved more expected goals in the whole of Europe than Alphonse Areola. I think he's been exceptional this year. I think Spurs should look at him as well if they can, to move on from Lloris eventually. Not necessarily just right now, but maybe a year as a backup. But Alphonse Areola at Dortmund would be a great pickup. Could they also rival AC Milan for Mike Maignan? Or there's a... what's his name? Oh, Udinese, Juan Musso. Who is very highly rated as well. I've got to admit, I don't watch Udinese week in, week out as well. Defensive midfielder, I think they also need to strengthen there. Witzel's been out for the second half of the season. Delaney has struggled in his second campaign. I think one interesting shout could be Kalvin Phillips from Leeds. I think Kalvin Phillips is going right to the very top. I think he's an exceptional player. And I don't think the step up from Leeds to Dortmund stylistically would be crazy. Bielsa's system, it's not too far away from Dortmund's in that sort of high intensity, lot of vertical passes as quick as possible into that front line. And I think Kalvin Phillips would be a great pickup for Leeds. I think he'd be pretty expensive this summer. They might not be able to afford him. I think he'd be at least £40 million, maybe £50 million as well, especially with that England recognition, which is no doubt going to come this summer in the Euros when he's part of that squad. Might not start, but Kalvin Phillips is an interesting shout for me. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Also, I think they could pick up Sander Berge from Sheffield United if they go down. I mean, this is a guy that was linked with Liverpool before Sheffield United. Don't know why he went to Sheffield United in the end. Poor transfer decision from him. But he was a superstar in the making at Genk, and I think he can get back to that as well. Toon Koopmeiners as well from AZ Alkmaar. I've been talking about him for about 18 months now. Really good player, can play at centre-back and midfield. Great range of passing. Can take free kicks and penalties as well, which is always fun from a defender or defensive midfielder as well. And then, in terms of a Sancho replacement, obviously they've got Reina, they've got Brandt, they've got Torgan Hazard. But they have been linked with Bukayo Saka in the past. Not saying that they're going to be able to do that this window, but maybe one to keep an eye on over the next couple of years. If Sancho does leave, maybe Samuel Chukwueze from Villarreal. He's had a very good recent last few months as well. Still only 21, lightning fast as well. Maybe he doesn't have the technical skills required to play in the Dortmund front line at the moment, but definitely one to keep an eye on as well. And if they get £80 million for Sancho, I think Alphonse Areola, Phillips or Koopmeiners and Chukwueze would stand them in pretty good stead. So that's how I would rebuild Dortmund. Pretty chuffed with that, actually, personally. I actually think we've done a pretty good job on those rebuilds. Yes, Henry.
I read a rumour that Dortmund were looking at Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain quite seriously.
I did see that as well.
I was just thought I'd quickly run that past you because his career at Liverpool doesn't look like it's really going anywhere at this point. So if someone could move, it might be him. I was just wondering, just a quick take on that rumour.
I'm not necessarily against it, although it's difficult, really. We haven't really seen him play for like 2 years now, but he is a great player. What is he now, 26? Yeah, I think he's about 26, 27. So he's still got plenty of years left in his prime. Maybe it would suit him. I'd actually prefer if they went for Naby Keita. Obviously, he excelled at RB Leipzig beforehand. Was one of the most talked about players in European football when he joined Liverpool. Hasn't really got a consistent look in as well. I mean, McCubs, of those two, would you have a preference for Dortmund?
Yeah, probably Naby Keita. I mean, Oxlade-Chamberlain is just a risk, and I just don't think you could afford to take a risk unless you're getting him like super cheap. Are you going to be able to match Liverpool's wages for him? First up, I think Oxlade-Chamberlain is too big a risk. I think we haven't seen him. We've hardly seen him play the last few years. Every Liverpool fan I know doesn't really rate him anymore. Not to say that he wouldn't have a better time at Dortmund, but I think it's just too big a risk in this market to go for someone like that.
Absolutely, they need someone, particularly with Delaney and Witzel getting on a bit. And Dahoud's actually had a great last few months as well, but they need someone who's going to play 30, 40 games a season. I just don't think Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, sadly, is ever going to be that player. But guys, those are our rebuilds of Juventus, PSG and Dortmund. Let us know what you guys thought of them in the comments down below, and let's move on to our big match preview. Right, for our big match preview, sorry, there is a van that's just kicked off behind me. I'm sorry if you can hear that. But anyway, let's get back to big match preview. There's quite a few big games this weekend. Obviously, Juventus take on AC Milan at the Allianz on Sunday night. It's Dortmund versus Leipzig on Saturday at 2:30. And Lens versus Lille, or Lens versus Lille tonight, I should say. But none of them, as far as our opinion goes, will have as big an impact on a title race in Europe this weekend than Barcelona versus Atletico Madrid at 3:15 on Saturday. Now, we did talk about Barcelona last week, so we are going to keep this relatively short before their victory against Valencia. But Henry, they, then lost to Granada and then beat Valencia. So, what are you making of them going into this one?
Ooh, it's all getting a bit nervy, isn't it, in La Liga? That table, suddenly Sevilla creeping out of nowhere, and then they went to lose to Athletic Bilbao, didn't they? So, I mean, who quite knows? But that Granada defeat was quite an intriguing one. There was an opportunity for them to go top. They had 82% of possession, 16 shots, with 4 on target to Granada's 5 and 2, and XG had it at 1.4 to 0.8 in their favour, but they still lost 2-1 at the new camp. And then that fairly nervy encounter with Valencia ended up winning 3-2. They went 1-0 down. Messi then missed a penalty before scoring the rebound. Griezmann on the score sheet as well. Messi free kick too before Carlos Soler netted a late banger. Really worth going to check out that one if you haven't already. I mean, although it was XG had it in Barca's favour, it was a very nervous game. It all adds to the spice of this giant clash, doesn't it? I mean, going into the weekend's game, Barca 2 points behind Atleti with 4 games to play. And if we look at their run-ins, Atleti have Barca, Real Sociedad who are 5th, Osasuna in 11th, and Real Valladolid in 17th. Real Madrid ahead of Barcelona and on head-to-head. They have Sevilla next, so another huge game. Granada in 8th, Athletic Club who are in 9th. You never quite know what performance they're going to be putting out. They've looked like they've been much improved since losing those 2 finals. And then they've got Villarreal as well, so you don't like their running at all. But actually, I think it favours Barcelona, really. They've obviously got this game against Atleti, then they play Levante in 13th, Celta Vigo in 10th. By the way, one of the most improved sides across La Liga this year. Massive congratulations to them. And then they play Eibar, the bottom side. So yeah, Barcelona, if you look at it, really, they've got the easiest run-in of the sort of 4 competing clubs, and Messi just keeps performing, doesn't he? I think Griezmann has been really stepping up in the last few weeks as well. Scored a double a few weeks ago too. So yeah, I think they've got the players. If they can assert a victory over Atletico in this game, assert their dominance, then for me they're the favourites to go and do it.
Yeah, it does feel pretty decisive. And McCubs on an Atletico Madrid side of things, they are just about holding on to that lead, but it has been a shaky few months to say the least.
Absolutely has been, and I think if it weren't for a couple of key moments in key games, they'd probably be off the top spot by now. Obviously, that Granada victory over Barca, huge for them. Because they haven't been the same team that they were in the first half of the season. We all know that. Obviously, they dropped points in only 3 of their opening 20 La Liga games. Since then, they've dropped points in 8 games. They've only won 7 of their last 15. That's under a 50% win percentage, which is pretty poor by Simeone's standards. Those defeats came against Levante, Sevilla, and an Athletic Club, the 3 that they lost. So yeah, for a side which conceded just 5 goals in their opening 15 games, they conceded 17 in their last 19. That's trebled the amount of goals they're conceded per game. They're still conceding under 1 a game, so they're still very solid defensively, all things considered. But yeah, I mean, it's a far cry from a side which looked on course to put in one of the all-time great La Liga kind of points tallies, at least on results alone. So yeah, it's been a really tough second half to the season for them, obviously kind of exacerbated by that incredibly uninspiring performance against Chelsea in the last 16 of the Champions League. They lost to third tier Cornea in the Copa del Rey as well. So yeah, it really does all rest on this game for them. But yeah, I still give them a big chance here. Obviously the Granada game was a massive for them. on the weekend, obviously they scraped past Elche. Marcus Llorente, who's been in great form all season, obviously scored the only goal in that game. He also gave away the penalty, which then ricocheted off the post. And it reminds me of a game a couple of months ago. I can't remember which team they were playing, but Jan Oblak saved a penalty very late on, and it sealed the points for them. So I think if they do win the title, they'll have, those two moments to thank in many ways. But yeah, Llorente now has 12 goals and 10 assists in 33 league games this season. Wow. I think if Messi wasn't in such amazing form in the second half of the campaign, I think he'd have a real shot at, kind of player of the season in La Liga. Luis Suarez as well is back, although he's been, obviously had injury problems of late. Scored 3 in his last 11 league games, so not in the best of form, but obviously against his former club. Who knows? Hopefully he'll be fit for them. But yeah, God, this is really tough to call. But I do kind of think like Atleti do still have the better defence, and I think that will count in their favour in a game like this, especially when we've seen Barca, a few mistakes creep into their game in the last few weeks as well. So I do give Atleti a good chance in this game, despite Barcelona clearly being the better team in recent months.
Oh, it's too tight to call, really. It's that incredible defence against the best attack by far in La Liga so far. I'm going to go with Barcelona, but there are some injuries to tell you about before we do score predictions. So Coutinho is out, Ansu Fati is out too. For Atleti, only Renan Lodi is out as well, but he's actually missed the majority of this campaign. It's been Yannick Carrasco who's been Simeone's preferred left wing back. Atleti have won 2 of their last 3 games against Barcelona, but before that they'd only won 1 of their previous 18 in all competitions. And obviously when they won in 13-14, it was that, I think it was Diego Godin that scored that amazing header against Barcelona. Felt like a massive moment, so it'd be intriguing to see who steps up for them on this occasion, if anyone. Personally, I'm going Barcelona to win 2-0. Henry, what do you think?
Oh, I think this is the hardest one of the season so far. I'm really struggling. Shout out to Ibrahim, by the way, the guy that kind of keeps track of everything.
Ibrahim Hashim,
Ibrahim Hashim. He reached out to me on my week off to get my prediction, just to make sure that I didn't fall behind you two. I got nowhere near it, I don't think, but anyway, I appreciate that. Let's think. I'm going to go Atletico 1-0. I'm going to go for Atletico. I think this is a huge game for them. But yeah, after that Sevilla-Madrid game, I'm so intrigued to see how the top 4 looks. I'm going to back Atletico, but I think deep down I kind of know that Barcelona are probably going to win.
McCubs, what do you reckon?
Well, we've got all 3. I'm going for a draw. I'm going to say
Boring.
I'm going to say 1-1. I just think like they're going to match up. They're going to match them up tactically, aren't they? I think they're going to frustrate them. They will get a couple of chances themselves. I see. Yeah, maybe Luis Suarez will get a goal back at the camp now. They also jammily beat them back in November. I was just remembering that Barcelona actually had the better chances in that game. Also an incredibly boring game. So with everything on the line, this could be an incredibly boring game. So make sure you tune into it. 1-1.
You're not working well to sell our big match preview, blimey, McCubs. Okay, there we go. All our score predictions are in. Let's quickly move on to our quickfire question. It comes in from Legend McCoy, and it's: will Mourinho's appointment reignite Roma? Henry, who saw this coming for one, and how do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, you're right. Who saw it coming at all? But I absolutely love it. I'm all over this. I've been ignoring your Twitter, Dougie, because you've been putting out, lots of facts, lots of little information about Mourinho's recent history. I get it, but yeah,
about the facts, man.
Yeah, I just think this is, it is quite like a romantic appointment, isn't it? I think it's much more Mourinho than Tottenham. He won't have the kind of pressure on him to win straight away. And actually, Roma do have quite an interesting young core of players coming through. I can completely see him falling out with Zaniolo. I can already see that happening already. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of turnover at Roma. I think Dzeko and Mkhitaryan are potentially on their way out soon. So it'll be intriguing to see what he gets there, because they're not going to be able to buy players, and they've called it a project or whatever you want to go with. I think this is great. If he'll certainly have the fans on his side. But I can't believe they've given him a 3-year deal. A 3-year deal. Like, when was the last time he played for 3 years? He managed a club for 3 years. It just seems like a mental decision in this financial era. But yeah, I love it. Fingers crossed. I think there's certainly room for Roma to get back into the top 4 of Serie A there. So sure, why not? I think this is as appropriate a Mourinho move as possibly could have arisen at this time, because none of us saw him going to a bigger club than this.
I knew you were going to be pro it because I saw your post on our community feed. Will the special one succeed in the Eternal City with the star emoji? Henry is hooked into his narrative once again. He will never learn. I mean, McCubs, do you have a certain bit of scepticism about this appointment, having seen what he did at United, having seen what happened at Spurs?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's a very romantic appointment. Like, he's still held in very high regard in Italy because of what he did with Inter Milan. Obviously, only manager to have won a treble with an Italian side. So I see it from that point. Obviously, Roma's new owners clearly have a lot of ambitions for the club. I think it obviously relies massively on whether he gets backed in the market. I think he probably will this summer at least. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done with that squad. I mean, he's coming into a squad which has, like Chris Smalling and Henrik Mkhitaryan, both players who he didn't really like at Man United, let's remember, despite buying Mkhitaryan, but both players who struggled under him for long periods. So there's obviously work to be done there. Dzeko obviously isn't getting any younger. He's lucky he's got Borja Mayoral on that 2-year loan, so he'll be there next season still. So that's a positive. Like Henry was saying, there are some good young players in there. That defence, has Mancini coming through as well, doesn't he? And who are you saying just then, Henry?
Kurumbula, the Albanian.
Oh right, yeah.
Defender. Really good player.
Yeah, so there is definitely potential in that squad, but at the same time, if you're relying on Mourinho to shore up a defence, which hasn't been great actually the last 2 seasons, despite lots of praise coming in for Smalling, especially last term, like that they haven't been very good defensively under Paulo Fonseca, and as we've seen with Mourinho at Man United and Tottenham, he now seems to be a manager that makes defences worse. So that's a little bit worrying. Having said that, Serie A is a different competition to the Premier League. Having said that, Serie A has moved on a lot tactically since he was last there, so he's got a lot of catching up to do. I cannot be anything other than pessimistic with Mourinho, especially with a task like this. I think the only success, he has to get Champions League football. Really, like a manager of this stature coming into a club like Roma, he has to get Champions League football. They don't expect him to win titles right at this moment, but he does need to get Champions League football. And with Serie A as competitive as it is, potentially Juve even dropping out of the Champions League places. Like I do find it hard to see them getting into the top 4 next season, whether or not they have Mourinho there. So yeah, I'm taking this one with a massive pinch of salt. But either way, it will be entertaining. He's box office, isn't he? So it will be really fun to follow.
Can I just say something quickly? I completely agree with everything.
Are you going back on it now?
No.
The old U-turn.
What he never had at Tottenham is an extended period of time to just focus on training and stuff like that. If you think he joined the club mid-season, then and then kind of the COVID affected season last year, went sort of like 2 seasons rolling back to back. The one smart thing about this appointment is that he will have a whole summer just to basically sit down, analyse this team and figure out what he needs to do, and probably fall out with a few of the players. But I mean, that is the one positive about the fact that they've moved as quickly as they have to secure his services now, is it sets a clear foundation for the summer to build on, which maybe gives him less excuses if anything does go wrong. But yeah, I think that could maybe work in Mourinho's favour when it comes to really trying to assert what he wants this side to do and how he wants them to play next season. So I think that's worth mentioning.
I think that is worth mentioning. Fair enough. You know who are the big losers out of this? The Sky customers. I thought he was going to return to the sofa and be that box office pundit. I think he's such a good pundit.
Love him as a pundit.
Don't get it twisted. He is perfect for TV, and he would have been great value on TalkSport this summer, I'm sure. Not going to happen anymore. And I also think the big loser is Maurizio Sarri, because he'd been linked with this job for months, and now he's going to probably have to go and manage Spurs, which is, equally irrelevant. So it's really tough times for Maurizio Sarri. But I just feel like with Mourinho, he's not been linked with a really top job for ages. He's only managed Spurs and Roma, neither of whom have won a trophy since 2008, and he's just slowly slipping into irrelevancy. And I want him to go out now while there are still some happy memories of him, rather than just this continual decline. With club by club. I mean, where's he going to be in 2 years' time? Is he going to be Sassuolo? And then, I don't know, Aston Villa? I just want him to go out at the top. So that's my message to Jose Mourinho. But guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. I can see Henry rolling his eyes, even though I can't see him in Brixton right now. Henry loves Mourinho, by the way. Anyway, that is all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It was a long one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Rebuilds, big match preview, Mourinho. We covered it all. McCubs, if they've enjoyed this, what should they go and watch now?
God, they should just go and check out our Explain series. We've done a lot on the Champions League reforms, things like that. A lot on the European Super League if you're not sick of that kind of content. I know most of you are. We've got Explained on the 50+1 rule coming out on Football Daily as well, I think, this weekend. So yeah, there's lots of stuff to check out. Go and check out the podcast channel. I think it was Pat, Henry and Ober on there this week. So yeah, go make sure you go and check that out. There's lots to get your teeth stuck into.
Kind Henry, what were you discussing on the podcast?
Well, we discussed a little bit the Liga and title race. We looked at Inter Milan and whether or not kind of dynamic between them and Juventus next season. And then, looked at the Manchester United situation there, which is actually quite a complex one in terms of the Glazers there. It was, a difficult one to get teeth stuck into, and it is it's good to see some of the comments disagreeing with some of the things we said, because that's exactly what we want to see as well. Not everything we say is true. It's impossible to us to be completely on it with everything, but it's great to see some of the feedback and even some people reaching out to me personally to tell me when I was wrong. but yeah, no.
Put in your place.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, feedback always welcome. Make sure you get some fire started in the comment section on this one. No doubt disagreeing with our rebuilds. We'll catch you later. See ya. Bye.